Dobré popoludnie, milí priatelia. Vítam vás na pokračovaní 5. ročníka konzervatívneho samitu tu v historickej budove Národnej rady Slovenskej republiky v Bratislave. V sieni ústavy v týchto chvíľach už začína panel o pro-life politike a u nás v štúrovom salóne sa budeme najbližšiu takmer hodinu venovať totalitným praktikám wokeizmu. Diskusia je pod patronátom nášho partnera, ktorým je časopis European Conservatives. A teraz už odovzdám slovo moderatorke pani Ellen Kryger-Fantini.
Hello. Thank you for coming here after lunch. The windows are open, so we hope the interesting conversation and the cool air will keep everyone awake. We hope. Whether it's the interesting conversation or the cool air, you don't have to tell us. We'll assume that it's the conversation. So yes, woke as the new totalitarianism. I see some faces in the audience who were at the dinner last night after the law conference, and I gave a few remarks at that dinner, reading from the new editorial of our winter magazine of the European Conservative. It's going to the printer on Monday. And in this editorial, we talk about the very real consequences of woke totalitarianism, because it's not simply what we used to call political correctness or saying a nice name instead of a politically incorrect term for something. These days, it is true that people go to prison for saying the wrong thing. People lose their jobs. People lose their children. People lose their lives. And that's what totalitarianism is. It's not simply asking for people to be polite. It's about telling people you have to tell these lies. For example, that a man can become a woman. You have to tell these lies or you will be punished. So I have a really fantastic panel here today, and I'm going to allow them each to introduce themselves as they take questions from me. We want this panel to be a conversation, really not simply question, long speech, question, long speech. We really want to try to have a conversation, and I encourage the speakers also to ask each other questions or remark on what's been said. And then we'd like you to join us in this conversation. So I hope you'll enjoy this. And I think I'm going to start with Teresa Nogueiro Pinto. She can introduce herself, but I want to say that she's recently edited and published a book about wokeism, and it's actually this book and the title of this book that inspired the title of this panel. So I'm really honored that she's here. So Teresa, will you tell this audience a little bit about this book on wokeism, why it's a soft totalitarianism, although I might argue maybe it's a hard totalitarianism, at least in some places, and how has woke captured all of the institutions?
Oh, I think it's working. Yeah, it's working. Thank you, Ellen, for your question, and good afternoon to you all. I'll briefly share the story of the book, why it came up. It was more or less a little bit more than 1 year ago. We had the campaign for the presidential elections in the United States, and a great friend of mine sent me a WhatsApp saying, "What if we do a book on wokeism here in Portugal?" And I thought, well, that's a great idea. But the first problem is that most people on the left, most progressives, and even people who are not politicized will say there's no such thing as wokeism. It's something that conservatives, the right invented. There's no such thing. And so we thought that perhaps the best way to demonstrate that it actually exists, and not only exists, but it has colonized every domain of our public and private life, would be to look at it through different spaces. By spaces, we mean from philosophy and academia, which are pretty obvious. I mean, wokeism in those spaces is pretty obvious. But then in less obvious spaces like law, the corporate world, sports, and so on. And the interesting thing is that we ended the organization of this volume, and I thought we'll need a second and a third volume because we still have, for example, theater, museology, health. All these places have been colonized by wokeism. And the point of being a form of soft totalitarianism, I think that one thing that we often disregard, it's because it looks so absurd that we think there's no ideological, there's no political thought here. Well, there is a lot of political thought, and I would say that wokeism is an ideology, and that's why it can be totalitarian. And in fact, it's a mix of three different ideologies, if you want, or a project and two ideologies. The first one is a failed form of Marxism. Of course, we all agree that all forms of Marxism are failed, but this one is saying, okay, let's do it without the historical materialism. So we don't care about the working classes, the means of production, but we care about this endless resentment between different identities. And so that's one side of wokeism. The second one is something that I think that has been with us since modernity, even since the French Revolution, which is this temptation to create a religion without God. So we remove God, but we still have rituals, dogmas, guilt, a lot of guilt. Everything in wokeism is guilt. But we don't have an horizon of salvation. We don't have redemption. And just briefly, one thing about wokeism is that there's no such thing as pessimistic as wokeism. What is more pessimistic than saying, I will not have children because we'll have a climate apocalypse and I'm eco-anxious? They do not have a project about the future. The third thing, and this is perhaps the most controversial, but I think I can say it here, is that wokeism is the form of liberalism that prevailed, that totally forgot freedom, but it is based on this assumption that we are atomized individuals in an abstract state of nature, living only to fulfill our momentaneous wishes. And so we emancipate ourselves from everything, from God, natural law, common sense, biology, and so on. Why is it soft? I tend to agree with Ellen, it's not so soft anymore. I would say that because we do not have, at least not yet, the gulags and repressive violence. But if we don't react, and wokeism is not that, Cristiano Ronaldo, which is a super football player from Portugal, he had an interview recently where he said wokeism is that. It's not. I'm sorry. And if we don't do something, we may end up in being re-educated in the gulag. So
Great. I think that's a fantastic overview of how we got here. And I think about, of course, Professor Legutko's comments earlier this morning, where he and Father Benedict talked about the 68ards, the 1968ers, who then fully became in charge of all of our institutions. So, uh, so Ludovine de la Rochère is a family activist, and although I don't know the full roots of the story of her involvement and her organization, I suspect that she didn't think that she would have to become an activist for the family, for the truth about men and women, because, as Teresa just said, for a long time we thought, well, this is absolutely absurd. This is never something that we're going to have to fight against. This idea of two women and a child is the same as two men and a child for a family, and so on. So, um, Ludovine, if you could just briefly tell the audience about your work, and how it is that these woke ideas are really affecting the family in France. How is this? How is this possible?
Well, you know that. Good afternoon, everybody. As you know, the will to destroy family, society, civilization in order to build a new man and a new society, this will pass by family. They need to destroy family, and in order to destroy family, the heart is destroy femininity and masculinity, man and woman. So it is the heart of our struggle. And in 2012, our president wanted to legalize same-sex marriage and adoption by same-sex couple, which rests on the idea that our sex identity doesn't mean anything. We may be a man and woman couple or two men couple or two women couple. It's the same thing to found the family. In order to found the family, of course, it's false, but they pretend so, and it is one of the pillar of the wokeism. And there are many consequences step by step with this idea that men and women don't really exist. It's only social construction, etc., etc. When they wanted to legalize gay marriage, our target was immediately gender ideology, which is a great part of wokeism. And of course, when they attack man and woman, they attack mother and father, they attack motherhood and fatherhood, filiation, parenthood, family. It is all these steps. So of course, we go on with the AVF for lesbians couple, with gestational surrogacy. It is the content of wokeism, and then what we struggle against. And there is another very important issue, which is education. Of course, their first target are children. So at school, they want to learn. We have not really a man or woman. We have to define our gender identity, and we may make a transition, etc., etc. And they also learn to very young people to learn against their gender stereotypes, which means they try them not to be really feminine or masculine. And I think it is a reason why women don't want any more children, because when they are very young, now they don't like to develop their mother sensibility, and they want to be men. And this is the root of that is neo-feminism, wokeism, and it have many consequences. Children are victims, of course. Children are targeted by ideology, and in that way, it's a totalitarianism, soft totalitarianism, but they want to change mind, to change nature, and that's why I feel it's so dangerous and terrible. And another thing, in the form, in the method, of course, we were victim, as many of you, of the wokeism method. So we are constantly insulted. We have physically threats, and in many ways they try us to stop and to collapse from the public debates. They want us to disappear. Anywhere I go in the cities for conferences, for event, I have demonstration. When I get out of the train station, when I come at the place of the conference, and my office was attacked several times. They absolutely want me or us to be silent. And of course, it's not a question. We cannot be silent. How do we say when they will, quand ils se tairont, les pierres crieront. When they will be silent, stones will shout. Sorry for my bad traduction of the Bible. I'm really sorry. So to answer your question, we are confronted to Wokeism in two ways: content and method.
I think this sounds so familiar to so many of us. This idea that maybe it starts with a soft concept, right? Love makes a family, right? Love makes a family. But then when you just scratch this, you see, of course, that it all crumbles. And then people like Ludovine have to say, actually, let me explain to you what we've known since the beginning of man, which is that it is not just love that makes a family, it's a father and a mother. So France is really struggling. But then we go to Spain. Just when you thought things couldn't get worse than France when it comes to woke, I'd like to introduce Alvaro Peñas, who's a journalist, lives in Spain. And Alvaro, tell us, can it get worse than what we've already heard?
Always can get worse. Yes, well, I survive in Spain, yes. It will be the best way to say it. Yeah, the thing is, it can be worse, but Spain is a good example of what can happen to the rest of Europe or what is happening in other countries. Because many people, when they meet an Spaniard, oh, Spain, your Catholic history, Catholic kings, everything, yes. And now, if you see Spain, has nothing to do with what it was in the past. And this cultural revolution, yes, it was very quick because we have Franco regime, so we have not the same path as other European countries, but they have taken the time. They have make a good use of their time, yes, to
They've accelerated.
yes, they accelerated. So now we have a totally woke country with things which are really crazy. I have here some of the. It was for later, but I think I can use them now. Is some of the money that the Spanish government has used for international cooperation, and I have to read it because I'm sorry also for the translators because for me translated in English this is difficult. So for any language I think it is, and let me see. Sorry.
I'm not sure if this one's being translated. So
Okay. Okay, let me see. Yeah, I have them here. The Spanish government spent in 4 years 1,800 millions of euros for things like this. Coffee production in Ethiopia with gender perspective. For example, a workshop.
sorry. Coffee production in Ethiopia with a gender perspective. I just had to slow that down a little bit so everyone can absorb. Okay,
Yes.
go on.
Very important in Spain, the coffee production in Ethiopia, as you may guess. This is better. A workshop on sculpting trans-dialoguing wolves in IT. Okay, as you know, IT is a very poor country. I get they have more important problems than this kind of workshop. Or, for example, LGBTQ dancing in Ecuador. This is things that they are spending our money, yes?
Right. Because Spaniards are not struggling at all. And that money could not be spent better in Spain. Instead, LGBTQ dancing in Ecuador.
But this is part of the woke thing, yes, the business part, which is also very important because many people does not really believe in this, but they get money with this. So of course they are supporting. And also, this is our national government. But if we go to regions, if we go to local governments, we have the same. I mean, everything is connected, and this is for many people they get a lot of benefits from this with these kind of things. Of course, this is nothing to do with the Spanish people. Also, we were talking about this. For example, in Spain, there was a program that the parliament approved for the ALS disease, which is a really terrible disease. People died, and they approved this law, this program. This costs like 50 million euro per year, but the government has not implemented it because they say they have no money. So you can imagine what the situation really is. Is really this is a tragedy. Yes, this is something that Teresa said before. I think is very important. She says that woke is not a project for the future. Really, woke is like a suicide pile. Yes, it is the suicide of the Western civilization. And I think this is something that comes from the beginning, from the origin, I mean, of this cultural Marxism. And I think every people here has seen the interview with the KGB defector, Jean Bethemov, I think is the name, Bethemov or something like that. And he said that they were putting their efforts to change the mentality in the universities. And we are speaking of the 70s of the last century. And now we have the results. I mean, for example, in Germany, the Green Party was supported by the Stasi, the German secret police of the Eastern Germany, yes? So at the end, they have been promoting these ideas, putting money from these ideas. And now we have the people who was in the universities, they are in charge of media, they are in charge of big companies. So we have this, and they, of course, accept this Wokeism, which is the more extreme view of this cultural Marxism. But at the end, this is an idea that is made to leave our civilization, how to say, ready to be conquered. I mean, doesn't matter if it's Islam or is the Dragon Bear Alliance, the China-Russia Alliance, doesn't matter. Anyone will attack us. And if we are a woke civilization, we are going to die because we have no option.
That's right. That's right. And I think it's important for us to dig in a little on what Ludovine said about starting with the children, right? So the schools and the educational system across the West have really been captured by the most extreme ideologues. And in fact, I've talked to my Hungarian friends, and we think, the safe space for conservatism in Europe is Hungary. But in fact, there are probably products of the Hungarian school system, even in this room, who will say, guess what? The schools and the universities really have been captured for a long time in Hungary. So obviously the government is trying to do its best, but perhaps the conservative or the right wing was given certain aspects of society and said, and the leftists, the Marxists, the former communists, or said, oh, we'll just take the schools. Don't worry, we'll take care of the schools. What could go wrong, right? So thinking about the children, I live in Austria, but I'm an American, and during COVID, one of the things that was really fascinating, and I mean, I can hardly say a benefit, but in some ways it was, of children doing this virtual school, was that their parents got to observe what went on in the classroom and got to hear some of this curriculum, this really crazy stuff. And it pushed some parents to say, no way, I'm not allowing my children to learn this stuff. Either they took them out of the schools or maybe they joined the school boards. And so I want to talk a little bit about the schools and have parents, in your observation, have parents decided to fight back, or are parents unaware of what's going on, or are the parents simply so marinated in this woke mind virus that they don't even see what's going on? So I'll start with Ludovina, but let's have a conversation just about how they're starting with the children.
in France, and I'm afraid everywhere in Europe, they speak about their targets of love, equality, freedom, personal happiness, and to struggle against feminicide, struggle against violences. So many good targets. Everybody is generally for equality, against violence, against sexual violence also. And it is presented as the targets of sex education at schools. And of course, the content is quite different. And these pretexts are spread for any project of law and any measures in the sense of Wokeism. And in France, so, at least a part of parents are very aware of that. So now they go to schools out of private and even out of any contract with state. But another parties are hesitating. But now in France, this education is an obligation. People cannot say when they will have the teaching, and it is forbidden not to send her children at school these days if we have an idea of the day, and we may be signaled to authority and lose children. But another part of the public, as always, are not aware at all, and things because ministry, education ministry, and medias, and the government, etc., repeat struggle against violence, struggle for equality, etc., etc., and against homophobia, transphobia, so for sexual health. So I should say that perhaps half a part of the population, French population, are not aware or don't say how they can avoid that.
In Spain, we have also in Catholic schools we are seeing this. Sometimes because the direction of the school doesn't want to have any problem with the ministry. In other cases, because sometimes it's very old people which is in charge, so they left to more the younger teachers, and they come with this ideology. And yes, there has been some problems even when there was a political proposition that the parents could choose if the children can go to this because they are always outside activities, not in different hours or whatever. Yeah, but at the moment it's true that there is some denial. For example, when with Partido Popular in Madrid, they say that they are exaggerating this. But there have been several cases of fathers who are protesting. I have a friend, for example, he's Polish, and he was really enraged when they gave a LGBTQ speech to his 11 years old. So he went to the school to make a huge protest. So, but it's true that many people doesn't really know what is going on. They think that, okay, no, they learn the normal things. And it's true that you have to be very conscious and to check. And also even the propaganda in some of the schools is terrible. I remember I visited one school in Getafe, outside Madrid. And you have the walls of the school painted with diversity is our strength, and Nelson Mandela in several places. I don't know why. It's not related to Getafe. And the teachers, even with T-shirts, we are the witches that you could not burn. Things like this, really crazy. And
We are the witches you could not burn. These are school teachers. Sorry.
And yes, there is a huge problem with this until Vox. I think it started to ask for that the parents have a way, at least just to cut this. Nothing has been done, but also because there was this denial. Many people say, "Oh, this is not happening." Yes, but it's true, it is happening. Of course, in several in Catalonia and places like that, it's much worse. Much worse.
I think that one of the great, in Portugal at least, we have a huge challenge, which is to guarantee freedom of education. And it's not clear at all that parents have the sacred right to educate their children. So that is not clear at all in Portugal. And those who have to send their kids to public schools, well, they are subject to indoctrination. I would say that not as bad as in many other places. We have those blandos costumbres. I don't know how to say it in English. Mild costumes, they say. But it definitely happens. But I think that what we are seeing now is that first there were the prophets, Sartre, Marcuse, Frantz Fanon, and they really believed and created these things. And now we have the bureaucrats and all the people that live of that lie, and many of them. And I think that many teachers, we have, for example, a subject that is called, well, the education for citizenship, and it's mostly rubbish. Other than recycling, all the rest is like you could not learn it. Um, and they don't even, teachers feel very uncomfortable having to teach that sexual education and so on. But they have to. And you see the same in political discourse, for example. All these empty slogans from global agendas, from federal agendas, diversity, inclusion, and so on, as Ludovine was saying, people don't have no idea what that means. They don't believe in that, but they just repeat because they have to. And from academia, I have this is a personal experience because I'm a researcher and a professor at the university. And now I have like objecting conscience. How do you say that? Objeção de consciência?
Conscientious objection.
Conscientious objection when it comes to trying to find funds for scientific projects, because you have to put all that gender thing, gender perspective. Well, I'm sorry, it has nothing to do with gender perspective, what I'm working on. And you have to do that. And because if you don't have access. And I think that leads us to a huge problem that we'll have to find out, which is, can these institutions, education, culture, science, can they be neutral? Or this was a mistake all the time and they cannot be neutral, and the left and the progressives have occupied them, and maybe we have to think about how would we occupy them ourselves.
One thing I just remember, one case there was in Spain. It's a local theme, but I think it's a good example. Several families protested because a teacher to children of, I think, 6 years old, she told them that there was nothing like the Day of the Father that does not exist. Of course, in the school they celebrate the Day of the Mother, and when there was these parents made a protest, the answer was that they don't celebrate the Day of the Father because there are children without father, so this will discriminate the rest. So it's the way they do.
But we have also to be very vigilant in every companies, because also in companies there is inclusion, equality, and there is training more and more to this point, and it is asked by European Union for RSE, social responsibility of enterprises. And there is a matter. There is a propaganda, firstly for children, adolescents, and young people, and also for their parents, of course. And in the same time, there are many paradoxes, because there is struggle between sexes, which is a great danger. So it is harder and harder to live in couple and to get married and to have children. And on the others, there is no sex. Well, and in all the institutions, at least in France and at Brussels, and very broadly at United Nations, all members are nominated or are accepted because they are consensual, they are in the politically correct, but more precisely, they are in woke ideology. And I say so because in France now everything is blocked. Wokeism has the power, political power, but also institutional power. So in Eastern Europe countries, I suppose it's not yet the case, and we have to be so vigilant, to be very careful about that, because when it is finished, on that point, there are other things to do, but it's blocked and really harder to struggle against and obtain to collapse all of that.
That's exactly right. I mean, this idea that Teresa brought up about neutrality. Well, shouldn't a university be neutral? Well, we see that in fact they're not. Should a company that makes cars be neutral on these questions of um, uh, gender ideology? And of course, the answer is yes. Of course, the answer is yes. Everyone knows the answer should be yes. But yet, every single person in leadership in these companies says, well, if we want to get money, if we want to be part of the successful crowd, well, then we absolutely need these um, the 10 commandments of wokeism, so to speak. We need to hang them on our wall and say that we pledge to the rainbow and so on. So if institutions are not neutral, even ones that really should be, then of course we come back to this question of do we take them over and say, okay, if they're not neutral, then we're going to bend them back to our will and put a cross on the wall instead of the rainbow. I mean, are we taking them back over, or are we building parallel institutions? I mean, these are the kinds of questions that that I think should be asked. But I also wonder, and maybe this is a bit optimistic, I do wonder if people are getting tired. They're getting tired of woke. Um, uh, Many of you in the room of a certain age will know the name Sydney Sweeney, and many of you in the room of another age have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm not going to try to explain Sydney Sweeney, except to say that she is a young woman who was recently interviewed, and the interviewer, now she is a white woman. No, Sydney Sweeney is a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes, and the interviewer asked her, "I just want to give you an opportunity to basically apologize for who you are." And rather than taking the knee, rather than saying, well, yes, I realize that I'm quite privileged and so on, she just said no. She just said no. And so many of you know what I'm talking about. The rest of you don't, and that's okay. The question is, are people getting tired of woke? We know, and Ludovine and I talked about this last night, in the feminist world, there is a fracture because of transgenderism. And now feminists who say, well, no, men are not women. I'm a feminist because I think women are women. They're excluded from this larger diversity chorus. So my question is, will the left cannibalize itself, eat itself alive, or are people just tired of woke? What do you see? Is there fatigue with woke? And then after we get through these kind of comments, I think it would be useful to ask the audience about some of this. So Ludovine, do you want to start? Do you see any fatigue with woke?
Yes, I meet very often people who say to me transactivism and gender identity is are too much, etc., etc., and they worry for especially for their children. But in the same time, they are in favor of gay marriage, of ethic gestational surrogacy, or for AVF with donors. I mean, they are in contradictions. So it means that not always, but very often, they are not still, they don't still understand all the ramifications. So it's not enough to go in the good sense. Another point is that we will need time. We could say a word about Donald Trump, which is struggling against wokeism, and it's a very good news, but it will need year and year because it's very deep. And we also may be afraid that there will be a new change in 2 years. But I'm really sure that any ideology has an end, of course, but not alone. We have to be active and aware, etc., etc. So yes, a part of people are tired, but it's just the surface.
Well, the left is a master on writing contradictions, and if the contradiction is too big, they always have the gulag, so it's no problem for them. I think the same. I think the people is tired, but it's also true that they think that, okay, but this is too much, but just a point less is acceptable, yes? So this is the problem. But I also think that people is starting to react. I think that people, this mentality of, okay, this is madness, this is not going to happen. When they see this is happening and now you can find even that your own government is telling you what you have to do at your own house. I think this is scaring people, and I think that there is a reaction that we are seeing this reaction. Yes, also the case of Trump in the United States, this anti-Trump decrease, anti-woke decrease, was the first thing to do. And also, if there is less money for woke movement, I think that they will have less power, because many of the activists and the people who are working with some people is people with problems, of course, mental problems, but many of them are paid people. If they don't get the money, they will abandon this cause.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think especially the younger generations, they strive for meaning, for beauty. Wokeism totally destroys beauty for truth, and so there's a sort of counter-revolution. But I think there's a big problem, that is that wokeism reached the law. So not only the corporate world and so on, but the law. And so we are deprived. Well, Canada is the end of the line. The UK, it's also dramatic. But we are deprived of the thinking and speaking tools that we need to denounce wokeism. The risks of doing it are higher and higher. People may lose their jobs, may go to jail. And so, yes, we are in it, winning the hearts and minds, but we have no institutional power at all.
Okay, so on that very positive note, that we have no institutional power at all. No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing. I do want to open it to the audience, and I'll prompt you a little bit by saying, I think we really do understand the nature of the problem. I think it's very important, as the three speakers have pointed out, that it is deep. This is not something that, 3 years of fixing the elementary schools, that this will solve this. This is the deep state. This is everywhere. It's baked into the cake at this point. So I'd like the audience to ask any questions you might have, make observations, but also perhaps help us answer the question, what are some positive signs, ways that you've seen fighting back? And of course, we're in the perfect country to talk about ways to really fight back through the law. So I'll open it to you. Somebody will grab a microphone, probably mine or someone's, and we'll start with Andre.
Thank you. This is Andrzej Kolarik from the Institute of Ladislav Hanus. My question is that we can observe the pendulum in Western Europe and the United States shifting back from wokeism to some sort of... Yeah, the question is to what? because for some people it's enough to make progressives cry. Others want to go back to a real substantive conservatism. Others would like to go back to liberalism as it was intended to be. Then there are the Tate boys. Then there is Nick Fuentes. So my question is, how do we navigate this anti-progressive moment, swinging of the pendulum, so that the reaction isn't something very scary? And how do we navigate this moment in history? Thank you.
Well, I think that's the $1 billion question, one that divides us all conservatives. But I think we have to rediscover meaning, which is not, there's a big question about what is it about being a conservative in 2025. Well, it's not about being a reactionary. It's being, in many cases, someone who is willing to create new things that your grandchildren will be willing to die for. And I don't think liberalism is the answer, because I think it's so perverted that we cannot go back. I think that Christianity is the answer, beauty, and going back to basics from Aristotle. I mean, reading less Frantz Fanon and more Aristotle, and we may recreate and create new things. So I think it's very important for your generation to know that we destroyed a lot of things, your parents, your grandparents, and so on, and you will have to recreate new things. So we have to reimagine conservatism. How specifically, I don't know, but I count on you to.
Sorry, I'm going to be the toughest moderator you've seen, because I promised we would be done on time. So another question right here in the front.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Christian Lasto from Matthias Corvinus Collegium, and I completely agree with you when you said that Hungarian universities do have this wokeism problem as well. You can study things like gender studies, feminism, and even in the Faculty of International Relations at Portugal University, the biggest, oldest, most prestigious university, you can study critical race theory, for example, which makes no sense in a Hungarian context. But I want to just get onto one of your points. You said that universities and these big companies should be neutral on these issues, if I got you right. Should they really be neutral?
Well, that's the question. Should they be neutral, or should they have principles that that we agree with?
Yeah, I want to pose that question to the panel, because I believe they shouldn't be neutral on these issues. I think the role of universities should be to educate the next talented elite population of the future. So I'd be interested to hear what you think.
The first thing that is that education and the university cannot be cannot depend of any ideology. But of course, neutrality doesn't mean anything in that field. Education is not neutral. She must follow the common good, general interest, person who must be respected, etc., etc. We should say it is in the Christian perspective. I see that in this way, but education cannot be neutral, because there is a philosophy in any education. But at least it may be pragmatic, firstly, in the sense of respect of person and common good, and thirdly, in the respect, at least in a public university or schools, in the respect, but the truly respect of family culture of any pupils. In that sense, we may speak about neutrality. I mean, in the actual context. But of course, education is a philosophical and human choice.
Right. So maybe neutrality simply means holding the perspective that every European country has held since the beginning of time until about 50 years ago. Maybe that's what neutrality means. Okay, another question from the audience. Just there.
Hello, I'm Cyril Pasquier. I'm from Ludovica University in Budapest. And I have a question. Thank you very much for all your thought-provoking speeches. And I would like to introduce a concrete case. One of my friends is a CEO in a French plant, and he had an employee who arrived one evening and said, until now I was Hervé, and from tomorrow I will be Céline. So it's a concrete case, and he's a conservative and practicing Catholic, and he had a case of conscience, and he decided to keep the employee because he or she was working very well, and protect her from any other employee trying to bully her. And so this was his decision as a Christian. And my question is, in such concrete cases, do we have to say that the wokeists have seized the concept of love, and now it's theirs, and we don't act on this level of love? Or do we also try to love, but in a Christian way, with a kind of doctrine and truth inside of us? Or what is the concrete behavior in such cases?
I hope that your friend at least is involved or support those who struggle against this ideology which lead this man, predominantly woman, to make this transformation. He is a victim of this ideology. And I hope your friend do something to prevent that. And really, I must say that the silence of many people in their job, their place, where they are, they don't say anything. Of course, we have family, we have responsibility. I know it's so hard, but John Paul II said, don't be afraid. And I must say that it's just the silence is the reason why we lose and why it is changing. Anybody, no, too many body is protect. And it is legitimate, of course, one's life, one's family. But so we are there. At least I hope he help associations or other organization. Sorry to be...
Very good. A question here.
Of course, sorry, just a point. Of course, it's the action is not for him in the enterprise to attack, to judge the person herself, himself. Of course, but the silence is terrible.
Thank you. Erik Nikerle from Christian Democratic Youth of Slovakia. My question is, in what we see here in Slovakia, I don't see any woke obstacle in law and institutions here. Most of our government is in recent years were conservative, some of them even Christian. But what I see is among the young people some kind of wave that only those woke opinions are the correct ones. Anything you can argument against them, and there is something like little of fear or something. Even you have nothing to fear here. We are in a Christian country, and it's something. No. It's right to all kind of genders should have their rights and those kind of things. My question is that where does it come from, and how to fight against this?
So I'm going to give this one to Alvaro because we're having a discussion about even in conservative spaces with a conservative audience, we've become programmed to self-censor. And so maybe you can jump on that.
Yes, we talked about that before, that sometimes we apply self-censorship. I was telling that it was invited in Romania some years ago, and it told me in one moment, "Hey, why do you speak this way?" And I didn't realize I was all the time not saying some words because, it can offend or something like that, even if I understand that this is, a way of thinking that they are imposing. There are many ways they impose this. One thing that they try to, for example, I have seen this in Poland, to the young people, if you want to be moderate, you want to be more Westerner, you have to be leftist, or you have to be, and you have these big platforms like Netflix and everything, that they are selling a message all the time. Doesn't matter the problem of this, whatever it's about, they are putting this a message in one way or another, sometimes very clearly, but other times not as clear. So I think the way, and this is important, is also to fight in that platforms. Also to denounce what they make something which is really scandalous, which sometimes happens, and also to promote this kind of things. That cinema, books, music, everything that can be used also, and that is the way to get to young people. Because if not, it's much more difficult. We have to make our ideas attractive for young people, which they are. It is it's common sense, it's the truth, it's beauty, it's many things that we are talking about. But you have to show this to people. In Spain, for example, now the change in the young people is a reaction against all the left-wing brainwash. People is really tired, but especially between males. In female, you can see, I remember talking with a teacher. He told me, I have a school in a class of 14 years old. Half of the girls, they say they are bisexual. 14 years old, can you imagine? And of the guys, 90%, they are, therefore, some teachers are far right, because they are totally against all the lefties. And of course, because they are males or they are guilty, as we talked before, yes? So I think the point is to focus in what young people is more likely to listen or to see. That's the way to get it. And also denounce when they are doing clearly something which is obnoxious or something like that, yes? Which happens sometimes with these media or these platforms. Same things like that.
Okay. So because we have 4 minutes left, I don't think that's quite enough time for a meaningful question and answer, but I will leave this conversation with a question for all of you to think about. When I think probably all 4 of us go to a lot of conservative conferences and congresses, and especially with young people, and we see all of the young political parties on the right with their booths and their materials and their pins and their t-shirts. And guess what? 95% of the people standing there and attending are young men. And what I always say is, where are the girls? Where are the girls? Where are the young women? Where are they? And what Alvaro said is absolutely true. And I'm sure that Ludovine and Teresa would agree with me that this political divide between young men and young women is very, very dangerous. You can't make babies if you can't even talk to each other, number one. So it's a demographic problem. But I would really encourage the young men who are politically active to try to have conversations with the young women. I know it's hard. And for young conservative women, or even older conservative women, we need to be talking to women. And we need to really listen to why they've been captured. I think all of us can agree that we cannot save the West with with half the population disagreeing with us. And women will come to us if we give them a reason to, if we tell them and remind them that this is about saving ourselves, saving our civilization. So I'm sorry that I've taken the moderator's prerogative to make a little speech there at the end, but really always ask where are the girls and then bring them in. It's so important. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much to my panel. I feel really honored to have been able to ask them questions and listen to their answers. And thank you all for listening and for contributing your own questions.
A ja chcem poďakovať našim panelistom za plodnú diskusiu. Milí priatelia, náš summit je summitom kresťanských konzervatívcov, preto nám nie je ľahostajný osud kresťanov na Blízkom východe v súčasnosti. A to bude aj téma nasledujúceho panelu, ktorý sa bude ale konať v sieni ústavy. Takže pre panel o kresťanstve na Blízkom východe, prosím, presunte sa do siene ústavy. A tu v štúrovom salóne bude začiatok diskusie nášho partnera, ktorým je portál Marker. A diskusia má názov Prečo sa na Slovensku žije lepšie. Moderovať bude Peter Števkov, začneme už o malú chvíľku. Takže do siene ústavy pre panel o kresťanoch na Blízkom východe a tu portál Marker.